This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager. Welcome to Wagon Wheel. I am Jarrod Kimber. I will be for most of this show. This is the podcast where you have a question about cricket and you ask me that question via Patreon, probably. And thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon. Or you hang around in the YouTube page live. And thank you to all of you in the YouTube at the moment as well. In fact, I think we've already got a bunch. But if you're desperate to get your question answered at the moment in the YouTube page, obviously super chats are the best option. But, you know, you might just put a question in there. I might randomly find it. All these things are possible. But let's start with the Patreon. And to begin with, Prashant says, which current day cricketer would you love to commentate with? Broad, Ashwin, or anyone else? Ashwin, definitely. Dimuth Karunaratne would be really, really interesting as well. I've always wondered what Jimmy Neesham might be like as a commentator. I don't know if he has commentated before and it's not as special. I think me and Benny Howe could be quite an interesting pairing if there was any poor random broadcast that would put us out. But you never really know. And you know, Gareth Batty and Jay Dernbach, try to think, you know, even Harmy, you know, people who I'm, you know, really like commentating with and really like chatting cricket with. I don't think I would have thought that before I had commentated with them. There's sometimes when I think, you know, Mickey Arthur was someone I really wanted to commentate with. I really enjoyed commentating with him. But quite often I do think, I won't name the player, but there was one particular player I was really excited to commentate with, and he wasn't particularly into it, and it was a particularly good session. So I don't think it's an easy thing to work out if someone is going to be good at it, especially a player. It might be a little bit easier with media and everyone else, but I think with a player, it can be a little bit tricky. But yeah, Ashwin would be fantastic to commentate with. As I said, Karunaratne is another one that sort of comes off the top of my head. Zampa might be another good one. Trying to think of players I've had really good conversations with. But yeah, I think those are the ones that come to mind pretty much straight away. Hamster said, who is the worst regular keeper in the international game amongst full members? It's probably Lorcan Tucker, isn't it? Is it Lorcan Tucker? Oh my God, I get all my... Yeah, Lorcan Tucker. Is there anyone else out there? Who's Bangladesh's current wicketkeeper? They've had some doozies. But yeah, I would have thought Lorcan Tucker would have been a considerable amount worse than anyone else. Obviously, KL Rule's not very good when he does it. There's that many. There was a space a couple of years ago when I thought they were worse. I don't think I have thought they were as bad now as they had been earlier. But yeah, I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. I'm sure the comments will correct me, and I can, you know, head over there and see what people say. But my first thought is that there isn't anyone, you know, traditionally that is that. I don't think it's the same as what we have seen in the past, where we have seen a couple of wicketkeepers that just shouldn't be holding the gloves at international level. Yeah, and I'm not just talking about David Boone, Rahul Dravid, but, you know, certainly talking about, someone keeps saying Cameron Akmal, but he's not an international wicketkeeper anymore. So do you know what I mean? And Cameron Akmal was bad, but I don't think he was as bad as, you know, certainly some of the more fringy wicketkeepers that were out there. You know, some of which just shouldn't have been behind the stumps at all. I think Cameron Akmal was a bad permanent wicketkeeper, but I don't think he was a bad, you know, he was bad maybe compared to some of the others. I'm not sure if he was as bad as, for instance, Lorcan Tucker as well. But it maybe we're just getting to the point now where wicketkeeping has got so much worse that it's actually harder to see the worst players stand out than it once was, whereas maybe perhaps it used to be harder to see the best wicketkeepers stand out. I don't know. Now I've said that out loud, it could just be words. I mean, they're all words. Some of them are sounds. Lee says, now wobble seam has become so prominent. What do you think we'll see? Do you think we'll see any genuine swing bowlers come through in the future? As a swing bowler myself, I would hate to see the art die. I don't think the art will die, Lee, because it's too useful in T20 and one-day cricket. Certainly T20 cricket where you're going to make your money. I think if you have the ability to swing the ball in one direction in T20 cricket and you can add a second direction and you know you can bowl it 85 to 90 miles an hour, you should certainly still have a career. So I don't think the art will die. I think it was already dying though, D, well before. Did I say D? Lee. Well before the wobble ball was coming through. I don't think we've had a genuine outswing bowler be successful since young Tim Southey. I'm trying to think. I don't. Hilfenhaus was maybe that rough period, but not quite as good as Southey. Yeah, I don't think we've had a genuine outswing bowler really come through the game in. When was Hilfenhaus? Probably late 90s. Late 90s, late 2010, 2009. Did he? Yeah, 2008 probably. Southey's around that same era. And I think if you look at it now, I think you'd be hard pressed to think that that's about to change. I think outswing bowling is an old-fashioned, well, not just outswing, as you say, swing bowling in general. I think being an outswing dependent bowler is a bit of an old-fashioned thing. I do wonder. I wasn't very good at outswing, but I could swing the ball quite a bit. Got that gift from my father, and I do remember in the nets occasionally. I was, outswing bowlers are always told to bowl as close to the stumps as possible, and then keep LBW and bowled in play, and then obviously swing the ball away to the slips. When I would bowl wide of the wicket occasionally, it usually played with people's minds a little bit because the angle was coming in, but the ball was actually straightening in the air. And we've already seen that, with Akshar Patel is a perfect example of that. Someone coming really, really wide when he's delivering the ball. We're now seeing that with, bowlers who bowl the leg cutter as well, coming really, really wide. There is a possibility in Test cricket for someone who is brilliant at the outswinger to come very, very wide of the crease and actually create that sort of Akshar Patel angle, which is, it actually feels like he's bowling a straight delivery when you're facing him, but it's still moving away. And so it's beating your outside edge. And then sometimes it's beating your inside edge as well, because you're playing, you're a little bit lost because of this new angle. If someone did that, that would work. Obviously, bowling outswing to left-handed batters from around the wicket certainly is a good tactic. And eventually, we will have more people like Wasam Akram who, with their left arm, can swing it both ways. Left armers will swing around the wicket. So I don't think it will disappear as an overall skill. I think there's too many uses for it. Oh, and just on the wobble ball, we are already starting to see players be able to go between a wobble ball and swing. Now, granted, they don't seem to swing the ball as much afterwards, but there certainly is that ability, I think, to be able to go through the two, and I think that will grow. Because there's no reason why you can't have, a Muhammad Asif or Stuart Clark type bowler who has 4 or 5 different options available to them. Those sorts of bowlers will still swing it as well. Ben says, what does world cricket look like in 20 years? I would assume that the IPL is, 50% bigger, maybe 50% more teams and 50% more games. I would think it's even possible that they're more than that. That we have a couple of other strong overseas leagues by that point as well, whether it be Major League Cricket or the Big Bash gets its act together or the 100 gets its act together, whatever that may be. I don't know. And that the owners have more and more control, and the boards realize that what they set in play was they were never going to be able to get the most out of. I think World Cups, one day in T20s will still exist. I would assume in the next 20 years, cricket gets in the Olympics. I think women's cricket will be a lot bigger, but it will be league-based as well, but with World Cups. Test cricket, I think Test cricket's biggest chance now is if someone does buy it and privatize it. I don't think it can last as a regular competition in any other way. And so from that perspective, I would think that it's either private Test cricket or it's almost like first-class cricket, where it exists, but is so sort of in the background that it doesn't particularly matter. That's off the top of my head anyway. Niran says, did you follow the Harmanpreet Kaur incident? I did. I talked about that. What did you think of her punishment? I thought her original punishment was pathetic. They then gave her a slightly better suspension, but still not very good. is there a huge difference between what she did versus what Ashwin, Virat, and KL did in South Africa? Are accusing SuperSport of manipulating the DRS. Well, they weren't specifically going after another team of the ICC, which I know isn't that big a deal. No, what she did was far worse because it happened at a point after the game when there was no reason for her. I mean, we're talking about the combination of the two different things. What she did with the Bangladesh captain is absolutely unacceptable. What she did with the stumps, I think we've seen a lot more. And I think that is more of a heat of the moment thing. You should probably get a small penalty, maybe a fine, but quite a high fine for that. But you should certainly be penalized for. You shouldn't be able to talk to someone on the dais in that way. There's just no reason to be able to do that. And also, in what she was saying, she's inferring cheating by the umpires. That's a little bit different to the whole SuperSport thing. And to be honest, I kind of agree with the whole Ashwin, Virat, and KL thing. I'm not saying that SuperSport were manipulating DRS. What I'm saying is we've gone out of our way to have independent umpires. We've gone out of our way to have technology into the game, and then we don't have independent DRS rulings. There have been. So if you watch enough cricket, I would say once every 5 games there is a situation, and this usually you get to see this more in a test match, where something will happen in DRS. We won't be completely sure of it. The thing will go out, and then afterwards there'll be another angle that will be found. Not saying all the camera crews or the producers around the world or directors are cheating or anything out, because they're trying to do these things very quickly. But it's also not their main job. It's a separate part of it. It should be an independent group. And so I think questioning and me and Sid Monger have both talked a lot about the fact that you generally get caught ball tampering away from home, right? A couple of players have been caught at home, but more often these days it's away from home. You can't tell me that camera operators in home grounds haven't seen it, and suddenly you only need to do it when you're touring. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I do think there's an issue with all of that, and I don't know how you fix it. I would say that because SuperSport do not have a contract with the ICC directly in that kind of way, that it's a bit more of a gray area, whereas what Harmanpreet did is not a gray area. It was unacceptable. She shouldn't have done it. She probably should have got a bigger suspension than she did. It looked like they were going to let her off almost completely. So I think they pulled her back from there. Nero says, Astle Christchurch 2002 versus Sangakkara Hobart 2007 versus Tendulkar Chennai 1999 versus any other great innings in losing causes. One that doesn't get talked about a lot was Ponting's 100 at the Oval in 2009, which I always thought was magnificent. Losing causes. Virat's 100 at Adelaide in the 4th innings is one that instantly comes to my mind there. I think England won in Pisara, didn't they? There's another one I'm thinking of though, where I was in Asia for a test match. Someone made 100. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot out there. I think if you go back traditionally, there'd probably be a bunch against the West Indies. I think there was. I'm not sure if he made 100 in this game, but I think that Alan Border played 2 innings against the West Indies, where he basically was the only person who could stand up against them and make runs in one test. I'm trying to remember where that was. That's one that instantly sort of comes to my mind as an innings that was incredible. Aubrey Faulkner's 100 at, I want to say the MCG, was renowned as like this incredible, knock. And then obviously Victor Trumper came out, and I'm pretty sure, I'd have to go back, but I'm pretty sure Australia won that test quite easily in the end. Trying to think if there's any other. I mean, there must be some great Shivner and Chandrapal knocks where they lost their games as well. So yeah, there's a bunch off the top of my head. Andy Flower would probably have a couple, wouldn't he? As well. Vivek says, thoughts on how India should structure their lower middle order, 6 to 9 for the ODI World Cup. It's a delicate balance between strengthening their batting and still having this strike ability to get 10 wickets against Australia or England. You'd have to go back, because I did like a 6-part series or 5-part series on India. You'd have to go back to have a look. I kind of think they don't quite have the strike bowling capability, especially with the squad that they've picked, to be able to have 5 or 4.5 genuine strike bowlers. And so you could go down that sort of New Zealand, South Africa model of having them as basically just going, well, number 7, we're not even going to have a batter. And in India's case, you would still have Jadeja. So it wouldn't be quite as bad in that sort of situation. And then pick your best strike bowlers. But I'm not sure that they have 4 out-and-out strike bowlers in one-day cricket. So I don't know if they can create the same kind of pressure that we've seen with, South Africa, Pakistan, New Zealand at times. So from that point of view, I think you have to go the other option, which is you take Bumrah in, you take, I don't know, either Kuldeep or Shami or Siraj, and you go all in with the all-round talent, and it's, fantastic and weird, and you see how it goes. And, you have a situation where you have maybe, what would you have? Hardik, Akshar, Jadeja. Well, they don't have Ashwin, but, if you had Ashwin again, you would have all those guys, and you would just sort of mix and match your last 30 overs from that. It's not perfect. But because of Jadeja and Akshar, you do have that option. Shardul batting at 9 in that sort of a lineup, perhaps. But yeah, I'd have to go back through, that's a really, really hard thing. But my main thought is, when you talk about strike ability, I'm just not sure that India has a natural strike ability within their lineup at the moment, or has in any of these tournaments. And I think that is a bigger issue. The Dika says, say the average Wagon Wheel listener went to a time machine to play in 1700s Hambledon. Would we do well with the knowledge of 200 years of cricket technique, or would the rules and conditions of the time hold us back? Oh, you'd smash them everywhere, I would think. You would struggle with, you're used to the ball coming out from up high, and it's now coming out from down low, right? It's underarm bowling. So as we've seen with baseballers trying to hit softball pitches, it is weird, that mix. But you would hit through the line. You would hit to the leg side where they wouldn't have as many fielders. You would sweep a lot more. And, for the lob bowlers, you would probably, because your power, your ability to hit across the line, I would have thought would make the lob bowlers a lot more nervous against you, especially those early lob bowlers. Maybe not the later expert lob bowlers, but I think those early lob bowlers, I think, you Nadika personally would smash. What else? I think the understanding of footwork and how to go forward and how to go back, and also how to use your feet, would really upset those bowlers, because they weren't used to that. They were using all that sort of stuff. So that's batting. Bowling. Well, bowling, you probably struggle, right? Because if you bowled overarm, they'd no ball you. So I don't know if I think you'd be a pretty poor bowler. So I think you might be Nadika, you might be the best batter of 1794, but you might be just a very ordinary bowler. Because what could you do underarm? You could do an underarm knuckle bowl, maybe split finger. Maybe, I don't know if that would even do anything. You could probably put more revolutions on the ball than those guys would have, just because they'll probably put in little bits of revolution on. Does that help? I don't know if that helps. It's a fascinatingly weird question. I love it. Aditya says, are you going to come to India for the World Cup? I would say no. It's August, isn't it? It's looking very, very unlikely. I'm waiting for I've had some offers, but nothing that is going to pay for the trip. I haven't got a sponsor on. I think that would have been the other thing if we got a major sponsor for the site. We've got some smaller sponsors for the site, and thank you to Wicket Cricket Manager and a few of the others that might be coming back. Manscaped came back recently as well, and got another one with Surfshark coming up, but nothing majorly changing. So I would say that means I will do it from home. Mood boards like the ones we did for the T20 World Cup. Yes, I think that's the plan. We will do mood boards, but we'll also do standalone videos. I've already got almost a roster of videos that will go up during the tournament. The team, me and the team will be getting together soon to discuss a few other things. I started doing some stuff today, which is the double century season on World Cups. And if you're on my Twitter account, you can actually go and see some of the clips I found from some of the old World Cups. So I do think we'll do a bunch of stuff from some of the other World Cups as well. But yeah, I would think we'd do mood board. Whether we do mood board every day or not, I don't know. But the aim would probably be to try and do it every day. Again, finances play a part, family plays a part, all those sorts of things. But if you're asking right at the moment, I'd love to do a mood board from the beginning of the World Cup to the end of the World Cup. And even if we don't do that, I think we will have a video every day, regardless of that. But that is the aim. By the way, if you don't know what a mood board is, especially if you're a podcast listener, we basically just do a live show at the end of the day where we, use clips and use graphs and everything to try and explain what happened in the game, why it mattered, and all those sorts of things. They're kind of a little bit like the videos that we make generally, except we do them live. And obviously there's a lot of reacting to press conferences coming through and me stuttering more and all those good things. Satchmo says, in the feud between Ian Chappell and Ian Botham, who do you sympathize, or is it with neither of them? Couldn't give a shit. The one thing I would say is that Ian Chappell was like an Australian Test captain at that point, and Ian Botham was 18, and obviously a good young professional cricketer. But if an 18-year-old bothered me, and I was a 34-year-old, whatever Chappelli was at that time, Test captain, just think I would have shrugged it off and moved on. And the fact that hasn't happened and that they've continued this feud for so many years it's kind of, I was going to say it's baffling. It's not baffling because I've met both the people involved and I can see why it would happen. I suppose people get into these sorts of things. I certainly have people that I don't like in the industry. I don't think there's anyone I would charge in a car park, though. Maybe there is, and I've just forgotten about them. If it would be impossible to sympathize with either of them. I haven't watched the documentary. Maybe I will. I don't know. Part of me just monumentally does not give a shit at all. There's a YouTube page. Might actually be John Boyce's one. Might have been Secret Base, the SB Nation one, where they do beef history. And there are some great beefs in cricket that I don't think are as public as they could be. The Gilchrist Shane Warne one is a really, really interesting side effect. There's also Akash Chopra and Shikhar Dhawan is another one that I don't think is talked about enough. So there are some, we're talking about teammates there, but also opposition players who, absolutely despise each other. But I don't know, there's something about two old men still caring enough about that sort of stuff that it just feels stupid. How many? Okay, let's take a break here, and then after the break, we will come back and we will do a little bit of we'll do more Patreon questions. It's Wagon Wheel, and I'm Jarrod Kimber. Of course, we'll be doing more Patreon. What else? What on earth else would we ever do? This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager. Your support is invaluable to us, so smash that subscribe button like a fast bowler back of a length. Or you could leave a comment, something along the lines of, wow, Jarrod, you're one hell of a swinger. Furthermore, help us reach more people by sharing our work on social media, supporting us on Patreon, or sending live super chats. Celebrate your cricket heroes with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their player-inspired tees, featuring legends like Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, and Viv Richards. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection is a must-have for the true cricket enthusiast. Welcome back to Wagon Wheel. Jarrod Kimber still with you. Ian says, Jack Russell was a brilliant wicket keeper, but had some extraordinary routines. Hanging a tea bag off a washing line so you'd use the same one for days. Not allowing teammates or anyone else to know where he lived. Wearing the same hat from debut to retirement, etc. Who else can you think of with really unusual superstitions? I suppose the most famous one is Neil McKenzie, the South African player who had the toilet seat thing where he needed all the toilet seats to be in a particular situation. Then he started taping cricket bats to the ceiling. That's the one that always comes to mind. I mean, cricketers are quite superstitious. I think it's a sport that allows for more time. So there is a lot of, not shaving on tours, keeping the same underwear on tours. Keeping the same underwear over and over again, which I suppose Michael Jordan did a similar thing to that. What else? Those sorts of things. But yeah, Neil McKenzie, if you don't know about it, Ian, it is worth looking up the sorts of things that he did. And to be honest, I don't know what Jack Russell had, but we certainly know with Neil McKenzie that I think he's talked about having mental health issues. I don't know if it was OCD he specifically had, but I think he has talked about that before. But if you look at Steve Smith, all the different, moving of it, there's a lot of bowlers too who, I think it was Morne Morkel, who used to have like a spin move at the end of his bowling action. And if he got it wrong, he'd like do a double circle. So there's lots of little things like that that we have seen. There's, of course, people borrowing bats for important games because they borrowed a bat off someone once and that worked for them. Yeah, those are the ones off the top of my head. I can't think of any great older ones, but I'm sure someone like Abhishek Mukherjee would know some of the great older ones. But yeah, there's a lot of, in some ways, there's so many peculiarities within cricket that there's probably really obvious ones here, but they actually just feel normal to me because I've heard them so many times. Ben says, I've never watched baseball outside of Moneyball, but I'm starting to see things about Shohei Otani doing completely unheard of things. Could you put his recent achievements into a cricket perspective? Yeah, so I think someone on Patreon answered this, and I think they were more or less correct. Imagine Pat Cummins is bowling with... I think of the right batter. Marnus Labuschagne, perhaps, I think was the one that they mentioned in that comment. I'm trying to think if there's someone more apt than that. Devin Conway's batting, perhaps, someone who's maybe not quite in the top 5, but in the upper echelon of batters. And that's what Otani's doing. We've only really ever had this happen once in cricket. Well, Aubrey Faulkner's an interesting one in that he probably wasn't too far away from doing that sort of thing. But Aubrey Faulkner never really matched his batting and his bowling that much in the same games or even in the same series. He didn't bat particularly well in England, is my memory, but batted incredibly well in Australia, but didn't bowl particularly well in Australia, but bowled incredibly in England. So, but he certainly was someone who was probably top 5, top 10 batters in the world. Well, certainly top 10 batters in the world. And would have been top 5 bowler in the world, I would have thought. Well, maybe not. And then you got Imran Khan in the 80s, who averages over. I say this a lot, and no one ever listens or reads this correctly. I always say that for a 10-year period, Imran Khan averaged over 50 with the bat and under 20 with the ball. And everyone goes, that wasn't Imran Khan's record. But it was for a decade, which is like a lot of time. I wouldn't have thought, though, Imran Khan was ever in the top 10 best batters. I would have thought he would have struggled to even crack the top 20, but he would have been around that 20 to 25 amount. But certainly and he wasn't always the best bowler in the world, but he was for a good period of that. And then eventually becomes, more of a captain and a medium pacer and everything else. And then you've got Sobers. We don't really know how good Sobers was because we know his best skill was probably left arm pace. And he probably averages around 27, 28 bowling left arm pace. But his overall average is expanded by the fact that he bowled left arm finger spin and wrist spin at times and wasn't as good as either of those as he was as a seam bowler. So Otani is in a sport that doesn't have as many all-rounders as cricket and nowhere near as many. I've actually done an episode with the Baseball Expert about Otani probably about 2 years ago, just as he was starting to break through. But in a sport that doesn't have all-rounders, he's actually managed to be a better all-rounder than we've had from a sport with all-rounders. I don't think we've ever had anyone at this mark. Perhaps early Botham is one that is worth looking at. maybe for a couple of years, because Shohei hasn't done it for his whole career either. And there might be a period where Imran's batting is good and he's still by far away the best bowler in the world at that same time. So I suppose that's like it. But, again, for Otani to do what Imran did over a 10-year period would be incredible as well. Rudra says, in 2019 or 20, I came up with my top 4 Indian greatest pacers. Kapil Dev, Zahir Khan, Srinath, and Ishant Sharma. I might have put too much weight on a number of wickets. What would your list look like today? I would certainly have Bumrah in the top 4. And I think Shami is a better bowler than Zahir Khan. And I'm a massive fan of Zahir Khan. And every time I go back and look at his record, it actually hurts me his average ended up that high. He bowled just in the wrong period. But I don't think he's as good a bowler as Mohammad Shami. So, yeah, I would have thought those two come straight in with Zahir Khan 5th. And Ishant Sharma is interesting, of course. I once called him the most improved cricketer in the world, and I think that's broadly accurate. And I do think he changed his game. But also his record did get better when everyone's record got better. I think he has probably ended up with a better bowling average than Zahir Khan. If Zahir Khan bowled in the same conditions that Ishant Sharma had, I think Zahir Khan would have had much better much better figures. And Srinath was incredible. Bumrah. The only thing with Bumrah is maybe just he hasn't played enough. But I would have thought that something would have to go wrong with him physically for him not to make that list. And I suppose just because it's a shorter career, there's a possibility of that happening. Oh, Rudra again. From 2011 to 2014, India underwent a period of transition in tests, but all formats. They lost 8 in a row overseas. Yeah, I covered a bunch of those, I think. Failed to win winnable match against South Africa and New Zealand, and then crumbled in a heap against England after being 1-0 up, and they couldn't take a wicket in Australia. What did they do right and what did they do wrong in that period? And with India going through a period of transition now, with a lot of players who are young now being older, what are they doing right and wrong? It's a huge question, Rudra. What did they do wrong in that period? They didn't have 4 seamers, 5 seamers, 7 seamers, 8 seamers that could take wickets all around the world. I think that was probably their biggest issue. They were probably carrying some batters coming to the end, although I don't think their batting's got massively better in this era than it was in that era. But they didn't have the world's best spinner. They didn't have the world's best all-rounder. They really should have done all those things. It was silly of them not to do them. I think sometimes that's what it comes down to, right? I don't remember. I remember thinking they were a frustrating side. I don't remember thinking that they were an idiotic side. They just probably, I remember Dhoni, I can't remember which series it was, but it feels like it was around that period, just going on and on about, we don't have a seam bowling all-rounder. And look, Dhoni's not like a historian of the game. But yeah, most people have never had a seam bowling all-rounder, right? You make a fairly strong argument that West Indies haven't had one since Sobers, right? Australia didn't have one that they could rely upon outside of, a little bit of Dougie Walters or Shane Watson action, or Steve Waugh when his hamstrings were there, between Keith Miller and Cameron Green, right? These people don't exist very much. So I do think there was, at a certain point, you just have to look at what the side is. And I think in that case, it's just not as strong as it is now. They've got more depth and more options available to them. And I'd have to look at what Harbhajan was doing towards that. I think he was still playing around that period, wasn't he? When did he finish? But Akshar might be a better spinner in Asia than he is, although it's hard to tell because Akshar's had the absolute best pitches of all time to bowl on. But Akshar can bat better than Harbhajan, could bat better than Anil Kumble as well. There's certainly the depth and the quality of players is vastly different than it was in the era that you're talking about. Patrick says, what attributes would you look for in a death bowler? I want my death bowler to be willing to play a bluff. I want my death bowler to probably, if they're slow ball dependent, to have massive revolutions on the slow ball. I want my death bowler to probably have 3 quality deliveries that they can bowl at the death. So It may be the straight Yorker, it may be the bouncer, it may be the back of the hand slow ball. But I want them to have 3 distinct deliveries, because it's just that little bit harder for the batter to guess against them, I think, in that kind of way. They've got to be really sure on themselves. It's not something that you can do if you're not sure of yourself. And you either need to be someone who really reads batters really carefully, or the complete opposite. And you're someone who doesn't think about the batters at all and just comes in and bowls. So yeah, I would think those are the main things that you would like. I always think that bowling bounces, I mean, doesn't work in all parts of cricket, of course, but bowling bounces at the death is actually quite a handy thing, but it's a hell of a gutsy thing as well. The guys who can bowl bounces at the death with the other skills that I mentioned are usually the sorts of people I want. But also, I go back to that Dwayne Bravo thing. Dwayne Bravo is a good death bowler, but nowhere near as good as his reputation was. But what made Dwayne Bravo such a great death bowler for teams to have was he wanted to bowl at the death. And there are lots of guys who are good at it who don't want to bowl at the death. Josh says, which team would win the World Cup if they played bringing back cow manure pitches? You would be looking at probably Australia if you had Hazelwood, Stark, you'd probably play Boland. Tall, hit the wicket bowlers would be impossible on those pitches. Watch Curtly Ambrose on a whacker wicket where there are cracks on it. That's kind of what the Australian bowls would be like from that height at that speed. I'm trying to think if it would assist spinners, but I think it would be more unplayable for seamers. And I think you want the taller seamers to hit the deck. I'm not sure how you would face Joel Garner or Glenn McGrath, Ollie Robinson, those sorts of bowlers on those wickets. I think it would just be absolutely impossible to be able to play. Josh says, you said in a recent Uncovered episode that New Zealand is a fourth-tier team for the ODI World Cup. I did. What is the following team's biggest weakness? Conway, Allen, Young, Daryl Mitchell, Tom Latham, Glenn Phillips, Jimmy Neesham, Mitchell Santner, Matt Henry, Tim Southey, what's his name? Trent Bolt. All right. What is this team's biggest weakness? They've only got 4 bowlers. It's their biggest weak. You want Jimmy Neesham to bowl 10 overs a game in India? Come on, man. What's happening? And if you're not getting many out of Phillips either, are you? Let's just have a look at Jimmy Neesham's record everywhere in one-day cricket, because now I'm fascinated. Jimmy Neesham has described himself to me on Twitter, but I think to everyone in the world, as a batting all-rounder. In ODI cricket, he has an average of 35 going at more than a run a ball. And I would say that majority of the times when he has bowled, those would have been in favorable conditions. Let's have a look. What do we want? We don't want his test career. We want his ODI career, and we want his bowling. I just want to see if he's bowled much in Asia. Where are we? Asia. Yeah, he's worse in Asia. He's more expensive in Asia, I should say. He's played 12 games there. He has bowled 84 overs in 12 games. Yeah. I mean, you can't take him as your fifth bowler. They didn't take him as their fifth bowler in England. I'd be shocked if they're going to do that there. So there's my first issue. My second issue is that they have no strike spinner, right? They don't have a spinner who can take wickets with the ball at all. So I'll just have a look at Mitchell Santner's ODI record. And I like Santner. I think he's a fascinating cricketer in many ways, but he averaged 38 in one-day cricket. So that is going to play a part. I don't think you necessarily need the world's best spinner in order to win this World Cup, but you do need spinners who can take wickets. And in Asia, in 14 ODIs, he has a bowling average of 60, which actually sounds... No, this must be Test cricket. My God, this is one-day cricket. No. How is that possible? I'm sorry, everyone. Live reactions here of Jarrod Kimber reading Stats Guru. Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely shocked at that. Yeah, averages 51 in India. You can't have if you can't have Nisham as a frontline bowler if Santon's not going to take wickets as well. So I think that's a huge issue with that team. You've also got in Allen and Young, two guys who've played 35 combined one-day internationals. So you're putting a lot of pressure on two guys that aren't as tested. Allen is still a work in progress. I don't think I think he would be a very good one-day player in England's team, where they have a lot of batting depth, and you could just throw him out there to average 30 to 33 with a strike rate of 110, 115. I'm not sure if that works as well in the New Zealand team. Having said that, looking at your particular New Zealand team here, it does bat a little bit deeper. So I do think you have, it's not as big an issue as when they go in with 7, when they go in with Santa at 7, which is probably what they're going to do. But yeah, no, I don't think they can go in with Nisham at 7. And then what? He bowls 6 overs and Phillips bowls 4 overs. Santner doesn't take any wickets. You've got no wickets in the middle, maybe with a good economy from Santner, and the other two probably aren't going to take a lot of wickets and are going to go for runs. Can't see how that one's going to work, Josh. Oh, James says, using Jason Gillespie's 201 not out as the archetype of a statistically outstanding test batting performance by a specialist bowler, have there been any comparable test bowling performance by specialist batters? Michael Clark 6 for 9. Yeah, I mean, the famous one is, of course, Alan Border taking 11 wickets in a test. And I suppose Michael Bevan taking a 10-wicket haul as well. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any other batters who took huge. The Michael Clark 6 for 9 is a really, really interesting one. What did Joe Root take in India as well? He had ridiculous figures, didn't he? Maybe not quite. 5 for 8 or something. Those are the ones that come to mind. There'd probably be some in history, though. I would have thought there'd be some historical versions of that. But I think I think Alan Border taking a 10-wicket haul against the unbeatable West Indies is, all things considered, maybe more surprising than Gillespie's 201. I'm not sure if that's true, but that, Bangladesh pitch was made for someone with no backlift. I'm not sure you could make a pitch that was made for Alan Border's bowling. Kind of looked like he was fighting physics when he came in. There's something about Alan Border that he was obviously a very good athlete. For those who don't know, could throw left arm, right arm, play baseball. But all of his movements were kind of weirdly robotic. I remember I used to copy his batting. When I bat left-handed, I was always bat like Alan Border, and there was kind of staccato way that he went about things. His bowling was a bit the same. But yeah, that's the one. I wrote about that the other day, so it's at the top of my head. But Michael Bevan one is another that comes to mind. I can't think of like any Mark Butcher 8-fers or anything, right? There must be a part-time swing bowler who took an absolute bunch of wickets somewhere. And I feel like there's an England batter who did it, but I don't have any name on the top of my head. So I'll stick with Border, and I suppose if you want Bevan, you can throw Bevan in there. Vikas says, given that Pandit and Jadeja will play at 6 and 7 in the World Cup, and 9, 10, 11 will be Kuldeep, Bumrah, and Siraj, who would you pick at 8, Shami or Shardul? One makes batting look stronger. The other one makes bowling more strong. Yeah, I think I'd go with Shami just because if that's the lineup you're going with. And obviously, we talked about completely different lineups before, Vikas. But if that's the lineup you're going with, I would have thought that you go with Shami, especially in the must-win games, because that gives you Kuldeep, Bumrah, and Shami, who I like as strike bowlers. Ahmed Siraj, I'm not going to look up his record, but Siraj could be a strike bowler, even if he's not. I know in the IPL, he's had weird years where no one's hit him and other years where he's taken lots of wickets. So I'm not actually sure where I sit on the Mohammad Siraj is a strike bowler conversation. But yeah, I do think from that perspective that I would just go with that lineup because you've got Jadeja at 7. And then, yeah, I think I like that more. I mean, of your lineup, I would might go in a completely different way. I think if I was doing it with India after everything that's happened, I'd probably go with an extreme. So I'd probably go with almost 5 strike bowlers if it's physically possible. Or I would go with, like, as I said before, 9 batters or 9 people with batting talent. I think I would go with one of those and try and take it that way. But I can understand why. I mean, it's that most probably not going to happen. It's not how India have been playing their cricket. There was one more that I got here. Oh, actually, there was 2 more. Ashwin sent one in who said, sorry, we don't have the graphic for YouTube, but he said, when it comes to all-time best batters from Pakistan, most people mention me and Dad, Inzamam, Yunus, and Baba, but Mohammad Yusuf rarely gets a mention in this conversation. But when I look at the stats, he averages better than all those. So one thing I would say about Mohammad Yusuf is that he did play in a very, very friendly batting era. So did Yunus Khan, of course. Javed Meendad, I think he's just another level than everyone that you've got on this list, although Baba's obviously playing magnificent cricket, and who knows if he can ever get to that. I think when it comes to Mohammad Yusuf, that he was a little bit overshadowed by the group before him and the group after him, and so he does get that sort of the Inzi Yunus Misbah vortex that he was sort of in the middle of. He also ended up with 7,500 runs, where some of these other players that you've talked about scored a lot more runs. And I just want to have a look at, so he had a 12-year career. Because again, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's absolutely fine. But I do think there's a few other players out there that have a better career, but he just never really garnered attention. And I think that it's. I'm not 100% sure why that is, because I think most people back in the day would have said he was a fantastic player, but he didn't quite get in that next level group. And it took Yunus a long time to get in that group as well. And I don't know if it's coming off the back of me and Dad and Inzamam, if that had anything to do with it as well. And I just wanted to check something, because he made runs in England. He did struggle in India and Australia. So, yeah, usually, from a reputation point of view, it does actually help to make runs in all of those different places. Let's have a look. Yeah, so he struggled in Australia and South Africa. So he didn't mind the lateral moving ball, but probably didn't like the pace and bounce as much, which is fairly normal. Look, it looks like a good record. I can understand why you feel the way you do, but I wonder if Yunus just outplayed him, as in played for longer. And sometimes those things do matter. The amount of time that you play does eventually come up. Average 65 at home and 45 away. That's interesting. But yeah, so look, he was a fantastic player. I don't think you get any arguments for me that he was a fantastic player. I'm trying to think just have a look at that. I'm still not sure that I think he's a better player than any of the players you mentioned, though. He's certainly not better than me and Dad. Inzamam played in a much tougher era. Yunus Khan would be an interesting one. And Baba, obviously, still in development, so we don't know. And Bloody Bugger said, watch a video titled Australia versus West Indies, 1960-61, end of series presentation. The crowd cheering for He's a Jolly Good Fellow for Frank Warrell made me smile. Thoughts on the series? Yeah, so Australia was a country where you couldn't move to if you weren't white. And yet Frank Warrell became an absolute hero. The whole West Indies team on that tour became absolute heroes at that time. There are reports of hundreds of thousands of people going out and seeing them on the streets. But I think what Bloody Bugger is saying is that it's possible that it saved Test cricket. Warrell and Benno agreed to play attacking cricket, as the 1950s was so boring. I think having a look at the figures in the 1960s, and I'd need to bring them up again, I don't think it was attacking in the way that we kind of would think of it as attacking now. And while that series, I think, played a part, England wasn't involved in it. And it was a one-off, in that kind of way. But the quality of the cricket, having a tie, all those sorts of things certainly played a part. But I don't think it was just that one test that changed the sort of the direction of the game. I think there was maybe the 50s just didn't really work for anyone, for batters or for bowlers. So I think there was always going to be a bit of a change from that perspective as well. All right, that's the end of the Patreons. I will get to the super chats in a moment, but you're listening to Jarrod Kimber on Wagon Wheel. And for now, let's play this ad. Love sports and want to write or podcast on it? Look no further than Fans with Laptops. It's a specialized course tailored for aspiring sports enthusiasts like you. Uncover the secrets of the press box, learn how to create compelling stories from scratch, and discover the best methods to share your content online. Support us on Patreon. Join for exclusive perks like AMAs, live calls with me, and a vibrant Discord community. Enjoy ad-free content, early podcast episodes, and access to my emailer, plus behind-the-scenes stuff. We've built our channel on Patreon support, so a huge thanks to everyone who has helped. All right. Well, there's no super chats actually, so I'll just take a couple of random ones from the group and see who else. Yeah, I've got a couple here, but yeah, if you do want to put a super chat in, feel free. Anyway, says, is Josh Little? Oh, helps if I actually take it off the tiny screen, put it on the big screen for you and me. Is Josh Little overrated? For someone seen as Ireland's next big thing, he seems to be hit around the park way too often. I mean, that doesn't mean he's not Ireland's next big thing. They're, still a team in development. Look, when he got picked in the IPL, I said he's still in development. He's not ready yet. He's got fantastic skills. The raw ability that he has is quite clearly there. I don't think there's anything to say. I don't think there's anything that worries me about him. He bowls at the death, and so he is going to get hit for runs every now and again. And he's not what I would say. I almost think his best option is maybe bowling one over in the power play and a couple in the middle, and then one at the death. But he probably hasn't played for a team where that is the best use of him at the moment. And so because of that, he's playing around it plays more as a death bowler, especially in Ireland. But also when he comes into the IPL, that's as an overseas player, that's more likely what he's going to do. But he bowls 90 miles an hour on his left arm, and he's reasonably skillful and reasonably smart. Just needs to get a bit more experience and work out his game a little bit more. And if his body can hold up, he'll be a fantastic bowler. And if it doesn't, he'll be another guy who didn't quite make it. That's kind of how it works. Keshav says, how do you rate the Aussie newbies in Hardy, Sangha, and Spencer? Well, Spencer's interesting because, outside of a big bash season and a handful of other games, including the 100, we, just haven't seen a lot of him. There's a bit of Dirk Nannis to him, maybe a slightly more accurate Dirk Nannis, but there's something about, being a big muscular left-arm bowler, maybe Brett Schultz type bowler, that is a little bit different. Most of our left-arm bowlers seem to, be more lithe and more naturally athletic rather than solidly athletic or muscularly athletic. I don't know if that's a thing. But he's really, really interesting. Obviously, Aaron Hardy, they are... he couldn't have a better run, Aaron Hardy, in that in some ways it might be difficult to get in the team now that Cameron Green's around, because Cameron Green took all the hype. Aaron Hardy's going to come in behind him. If Aaron Hardy came first, there would have been a lot of hype about him as an all-rounder as well. And again, in a culture that hasn't had them. His first class batting average is 42, and his first class bowling average is 29. I don't know if he has the raw bowling skills of Cameron Green, but from the little I've seen him bowl, he maybe understands his bowling a little bit more than Green does. And I'm not sure he quite has the same top-end batting ability as Cameron Green, but as a number 6, number 7, I think he, if he averaged 36 or 37 in Test cricket, based on the little bit I've seen of him, I wouldn't have a problem from that point of view. As a limited overs cricketer, he hasn't made a lot of runs yet, but he struck the ball pretty well in T20 cricket, and his bowling's good enough, I suppose. My memory of him is not bowling as much in T20 cricket as I would have liked, but in one-day cricket, I think his record's not too bad. Jason Sangha is a really interesting one. I can't remember what tour it was, but as a very young player, he was talked up quite a bit, and probably just hasn't made the runs in professional cricket that he should have. I think they just think that he's one of those guys who has now worked it out, and rather than waiting a little while for it all to fully come together, there's a chance to blood him. It was funny because I was talking about him the other day. I think the Wisden magazine, Joe Harmon was doing something on Australians, and I said Sangha was it looked like he was going to be another one of those lost batters where everyone talked him up as a younger player, and he hadn't quite come through. He hasn't made a white ball 100 yet. He hasn't played as much List A cricket as I probably would have thought he would have. He's been a good T20 player, but certainly not an above average T20 player. There was, times when people would talk about his bowling. I don't think that went up. But I remember seeing him at 19, and it was quite clear that he was a very talented player. If he's been able to bring all that together, then there's absolutely no reason why he can't be successful. But I don't think he's going to be successful straight away, and it might be a bit of a long burn with him. But I don't see it as an issue of bringing him in and seeing how he goes. Saurabh says, is there a reason why Derek Underwood and Chandra had a decent record in England, but Anil Kumble struggled? Covered pitches, lack of bowling support, or flatter decks? Yeah, covered pitches would be the main reason, I would have thought. It was different bowling spin in England up until 1980, I suppose you would say, 1985. After that, we do see more seam. They were never spin dominant, but, they had guys like Headley Verity and, Jim Laker and Tony Locke, and, they had regular spin options. And it does feel once they started covering their wickets, they went to much more of a seam-dependent environment in England. So, that is the possible part of the case. But also, I would have thought that Derek Underwood and Chandrasekhar were faster in their era than the other spinners compared to Kumble in his era. It's not that he wasn't a fast spinner, but I think they stood out more as faster spinners in their era than perhaps Kumble did in his, which is a slight advantage they might have had. I don't know how that would have helped necessarily in England as much, but I would have thought overall that could have played a part. But yeah, the covered pitches I would have thought is, I don't know if we have the stats on covered pitches versus uncovered pitches, because I don't know if every time when we started putting covers on wickets, if they started recording which games had them. I haven't seen them if they do exist, but I do think that would be a really interesting thing to go back and have a look, because I think that spinners specifically, if you played cricket on a covered wicket and you play cricket on an uncovered wicket, and I'm lucky enough to have played a lot of cricket on both as a spinner, I always felt that if you played on a wicket that was good for seamers and was covered, as a spinner, I didn't get much out of it. Whereas if I played on a wicket that was good for seamers that was uncovered, I was still very much in the game as well. So I do feel there is a difference there. So maybe that makes sense. Anyway, we have heaps of stuff coming out. If you haven't seen our Wahab Riaz video that we made the other day, really interesting looking back at his international career. We've got one on England selection with the whole Harry Brook thing coming out. And as I said, absolute arseload of World Cup content, and another really big video series, maybe even a couple of video series that we will have, I would hope, in early September. And then we will probably by the end of September, we will start all in with our World Cup content, of which, every time me and Cheyenne talk, we come up with about 3 more ideas. So there's a ton of stuff out there. Thank you everyone for supporting us, especially those on Patreon. And though no one sent a super chat today, generally we do get a lot of super chats. So thank you to everyone out there who does send a super chat as well. Thank you for your support. Remember to hit up our sponsors as well. They're another reason that, we can continue to make as many videos as we can. And this has been Wagon Wheel. I will be Jarrod Kimber for some time now, and I will speak to you again next time. A little bit of grass on the wicket is good, but too much and all hell breaks loose. Not enough and things can go sideways very quick. The same is true of your pubic hair. And you don't have a groundsman who smells like fertilizer telling you what to do. No, you are the curator of your own pubic pitch. So if you're having trouble grooming your pitch, what about Manscaped? They've invented a sleek, well-designed, optimized trimmer that helps you shave your balls. I've used it, and it's incredible. It's good enough to use at Lord's. So get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code REDINKA. And you just put that in at manscaped.com. That's 20% off, free worldwide shipping, manscaped.com. The code is REDINKA. I always thought